NABA,
Sorry.
and this meeting is being recorded. So when Lisa first asked me to do this, she asked me to talk about mental wellness and how it affects us during, in the light of COVID. And mental wellness is something I think about every single day when I'm working with people. We talk about, grief. We talk about goal setting, trying to turn the negative into a positive. And so when I think about mental wellness, what it really is how we think, how we feel, and how those thoughts and feelings affect our reactions. I think the two most important factors in our mental wellness is our self-awareness and our coping skills. Self-awareness is really kind of a meta idea. It's sort of thinking about how the way we think. I know it's kind of an interesting way to put it, but thinking about how the way we think is actually a good way to develop what we call neuroplasticity. It creates room in our brains to become more creative, to problem solve, to be aware of our emotions and our reactions. Really what neuroplasticity is the ability to grow, to think creatively, and to see different perspectives. And when I think about stress management and how to deal with things we can control and things we can't control, it's really understanding our minds and our feelings. I think sometimes we tend to feel guilty when we feel bad about something. Our feelings aren't necessarily lying to us. They're natural. We're always processing things and we're creating feelings, with what little information we have. And we can control our feelings to some extent. I think more important than controlling them is understanding them and accepting them. I'll give you an example. As it comes to our feelings, a lot of times with COVID, the unknown is what scares us. And COVID is this kind of, there's a lot of different reactions we've had where, it's scary. We hear it on the news, people are getting sick. But then also sometimes we look out our window and everything looks normal and we're not sure why we feel weird or what's going on in the world. A couple years ago, I went to a comedy show with my wife, and I was really reluctant to go because I have this weird fear about being at a comedy club that the comedian's just going to point to me and look at that big stupid guy right there, and everyone's going to laugh at me. It's kind of a ridiculous thought, but while we were at the show, my phone goes off in a text, and I did not want to pull out my phone and get called out by the comedian, but luckily with technology, I had this stupid Apple Watch attached to me, and I could read half of the text. And the text read, it was from my sister, and it said, "Nate, I want you to know there was an accident. Your brother was trail running, and he slipped and fell off a 30-foot ... My watch, only shows half the message. There's only a few minutes left in the show, and I'm sitting here running through all the possibilities that can go wrong. I had a friend recently pass away before that in a car accident, so my mind jumps to that there's death, there's this horrible thing. Yeah. So I wait for the show to be over. I get out, I call my sister, and he fell off a 30-foot waterfall and into the water and broke his ankle. And he was perfectly fine except for a broken ankle. And I remember my first thought was how happy I was to hear that my brother had a broken ankle. And, that just shows us the power of our brains. And if someone were to tell me he broke his ankle or he didn't break his ankle, breaking your ankle would seem so horrible. But when I thought, paralyzed or dead or whatever, a broken ankle was really good news. And so that just example really gets me to think about our thoughts, how we process them, our feelings, what our brains are capable of comprehending. We're naturally going to compare our stressors to something else that's already happened. And we kind of have a choice when we're making those natural comparisons. We can jump to the worst conclusion, or we can try to think of a good thing that's happened. our brains and our views, we tend to tilt towards the negative. We have to work a lot harder to see the positive in things. And that's part of self-awareness, is understanding that we go to the negative naturally. So the next thing I want to talk about is kind of how you develop your self-awareness and how to try to control it into a more positive light. And that's the first step, is understanding that we tend to think towards the negative. And when you understand that, you can kind of stop yourself in that process and say, okay, I'm going towards the negative, and put the brakes on and try to think of, a more positive version. We have to work harder to see the positive. We have to work harder to see the good. When we practice gratitude, either by writing things down that we're thankful for, or even saying a few things in our minds what we're thankful for, that increases dopamine in our mind, in our bodies, which is kind of the motivation. That increases serotonin, which is the feeling of well-being. And these are just good chemicals in our body. And so being introspective is a really important aspect of self-awareness. I don't know if you guys can hear the crying dog. Sorry, the mailman's here. So being introspective is a really important aspect of self-awareness. When there's a study I came across that when asked, 95% of the people believe that they're self-aware and they're introspective. And then the study said, well, out of those 95%, 10 to 15% of those people actually are self-aware. So 80% of us at least are walking around thinking we're self-aware when we're not. And you can imagine kind of the issues that creates, where, a false sense of confidence, or, this idea that we hear something, we want to believe what we hear. So we know what we want to believe. And when people they're asked, how do you practice introspection? And when people, they say they ask themselves why. And that's not really the way to do it. Asking yourself why is kind of creating more problems than they're actually solving. We tend to think of our brains as supercomputers, that we get this information and we have the right information. They're not supercomputers, they're more emotional. When we hear something, we either want to be emotionally comfortable, or, we jump to a conclusion. Instead of asking why, when we're, doing this self-reflection, the better question is what? What can I do? Or what am I feeling? Because again, our feelings aren't lying to us. And if we're trying to find out why we feel bad, we're kind of going down a wormhole, maybe making excuses for things, or putting blame on other people. But if you change that question to, what is causing me to feel this way? It puts us in a more positive light of a problem solving sort of thinking. Another thing I tend to talk about with people I work with is, before we're solving our problems, we have to solve our relationships to our problems. What are our problems doing to us? And self-awareness and mental wellness, stress management, there's like two things that make it, successful for us. It's the mind and the body connection, understanding what's going on in our heads, what we're thinking, and also understanding what's going on with our bodies. Something I like to say to myself and the people I'm working with is, start, notice the obvious. A lot of times the obvious goes unnoticed. An example of that is, stress or headaches. You notice it, but what's causing it, and paying attention to your mind and your body. An important part of stress management is understanding also the physiological aspects of stress management. What is happening and why is it happening? Where stress, it's not all bad. There's good stress and there's bad stress. And a good amount of stress, exercise or having to think outside the box, that's good for our immune system. That's good for our bodies. It makes us healthier, it makes us smarter. It creates that neuroplasticity of, thinking about our thinking. It makes us, better equipped to solve problems. when we get stressed, our brains are reacting before we even really know what's going on. Our heart beats faster, our pupils dilate, our muscles tend to tense, we can sweat, we can become hyper focused. And this is a defense mechanism that people have had since the existence of people, and it's helped us a lot. It can save us, it gets us out of a lot of situations. But what happens is we forget kind of how to put the brakes on. Our body has spent so much time stressed that we can't slow ourselves down. So again, sort of recognizing the effects of the stress. Notice, is your body heating up? Am I starting to sweat? Do I get a headache? Do I get back pain or some sort of uncomfortable feeling? Recognizing it, what is going on in our body? Our body is firing up. It's everything is working, which is, yes, a good thing. But sometimes it's working a little overdrive. So that there are some things we can do beforehand, like preventative measures, to make that stress not as negative, not affect us so much. And also things we can do in the moment to make us feel better. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the long-term things that we can do to make us less stressful. It's kind of the obvious, but the unnoticed. And that's really, again, it starts with the awareness. What's happening? What's causing it? I don't know how many people they'll have a bad day at work, you drive home, and then maybe you're a little more negative towards your spouse, and things kind of snowball. And taking the time to recognize, okay, I'm not feeling well, I had a bad day at work, I'm a little tired, my mind might be in the negative. Before we even do anything about it, before we even try to solve that problem, we're recognizing our feelings. And that actually improves our mood. It makes it so when we do interact with someone, we can be more patient with ourselves, more patient with that other person. So long term, we want to start to recognize our triggers. What makes us mad? What makes us uncomfortable? That's going to increase our self-awareness. We want to be, this is also called mindfulness. It's developing an awareness of our body and our mind, not reacting to them, just becoming aware of them. The other, more important long-term things we can do to decrease our stress and build our self-awareness is exercise. Exercise is a good example of good stress on the body and mind. It's putting us to work. It's making our heart beat faster. It's making us sweat. It's a good positive thing. And then when you're done, it all slows down. That exercise is actually building our tolerance to handle more stressful situations. Going for a jog in the morning makes that uncomfortable interaction with a coworker more tolerable, because our bodies are trained to handle that heart pumping, that sweating feeling. Our bodies are training itself to regulate. Nutrition plays a huge role in our stress and how we feel and how we react to it. Sugar is it's doing what cortisol is doing. It's firing our body up. It's getting us to sweat, to pump faster. It's getting things to work in hyperdrive. So it's really putting stress in our bodies is what we're doing. I don't say never eat sugar, but be aware that this is going to happen when you eat it. And so when you have a giant soda, you're going to get that rush, but what goes up must come down. And you're also going to get that headache and that lull sort of feeling. So beforehand, taking care of your body, being aware, talking to your family and your friends, having someone to not necessarily solve your problems, but that you can express what's bothering you to and just get it out there. It's verbalizing it. I got a crying dog. In the moment. So what can we do when we're feeling stressed, when it's already there? So the first thing is breathing exercises. And that really comes with understanding what's going on with our body, where the cortisol, the brain, it's getting the signal that there's something stressful. So sending out the adrenaline through our body that's saying, okay, let's go, let's get to work. It's pumping us up. So when we can notice those feelings, the best thing to do, and it's going to work all the time, no matter what. It might not be as effective as you want, but you will get some benefits from a deep exhale. You know, a lot of people talk about breathing in and breathing out. The key is a deeper exhale than you are inhaling. That's sending signals to your body to slow down, to get this out of your body, to just relax. It's slowing your heart down. So what I like to do is take 2 short breaths in through the nose. This is actually a perfect real life example, because it's stressful to have a barking dog at your feet when you're presenting. So what I'll do is breathe in through the nose, 2 shorter breaths, and then exhale very dramatically. Now, I recommend doing it at least 3 times, up to about 10 even. And again, it's not going to solve your problem. It's not going to take away the stressor, but it's going to slow your body down. It's going to make you it's going to give you better tools to react, to think, to not worry about what your body is doing, but to focus on the task at hand. Another thing I like to do during stressful situations, again, this goes to the self-awareness of the why, of asking what and not why. It is thinking about the importance of positive self-talk. When we're asking ourselves why am I like this? You know, why am I in pain? Why do I feel this way? It's really negative self-talk. We're sort of putting ourselves in the mindset of, I caused this. There's no issue. You know, there's no answer. It's not really helpful. So put yourself in the what. What can I do? The positive self-talk would be, you know, I'm trained for this. I can get through this. I have support. And it's funny because when people are actually in a real situation where they are stressed, to say to them, you know, have a positive outlook can sometimes feel like a slap in the face, but it does really make all the difference in how we're going to handle something. If we're going to have the energy to get through things, if we're going to be able to think creatively, to see a different perspective, to think outside of the box. You know, what are my choices? You know, what is something I can do to feel better versus, you know, why did this happen and why am I feeling like crap? Another in the moment sort of relaxation technique that I like to utilize is, you know, it's a little out there. It's kind of, you know, technically acupuncture, but it's something that you can do kind of to yourself. Really, when it comes to a relaxation technique, you know, a lot of these actually, there's science behind them working, but the more important thing is if you believe it's working, if you can kind of tell yourself, get in the reframe it that this is going to help me. So what I'll do is I'll take my thumb and press it right between my index finger and middle finger where the knuckles meet on the palm of my hand. So like on the palm of my hand, I'll have my hand facing me and I'll press the joint where my index finger and my middle finger meet. And there's an artery there that leads right to your heart. So if you're intentionally, you know, you have to be very intentional about these. If you're intentionally pushing, applying pressure and exhaling and telling yourself, this is going to help me relax. This is slowing my heart rate down. It will give you benefits. Another one you like to see people do is put pressure points on their temples. So I think back to my mom when my brother and I were misbehaving. A lot of times she'd put her hands on her temples and say, God help me. It was more of a negative connotation to it. I think it did make her feel better, but if you put your hand to your temples and have the positive reframing of, It's okay. I can relax. I can get through this. It's going to have more benefits. Really, where your mindset is one of the more important aspects of this. Is this will work. Give it time. The other sort of in the moment de-stressor that I like to go to is it's mindfulness again, but it's kind of it's a quick sort of body scan, and it can be done. There's no real science to practicing mindfulness. You don't have to have your knees crossed and floating in the air. You can practice mindfulness walking through the park or sitting at your desk or waiting in line. That's when I like to do it the most, is if I'm waiting for something, standing there waiting and I'm feeling my stress levels rise. So to practice that, the first thing I'll do is start with just breathing. And again, it's pointing out the obvious, but the unnoticed. That's a lot of what stress is. It's the obvious, but unnoticed. When I tell people to focus on their breath, again, I get a lot of eye rolls. But if you really think and you're honest with yourself, how many times per day do you focus on your breathing and you don't just pay attention to that? And it's pretty rare. But if we do that, there's so many benefits. And so if I'm doing this sort of on-the-go mindfulness, I'll pay attention to my breath. I'll bring awareness and acknowledge kind of how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. I don't necessarily act on it. I just acknowledge it. I'll say to myself, I'm stressed. I'm in line for waiting for something. And now I'm only going to pay attention to my breath. So just the breath. That's it. Paying attention to that. Quick acknowledgement of my feelings, then just to the breath. And then I'll come back to my thoughts, where I will notice them, but not do anything, not act on them. And I like to imagine my thoughts. I think of them, as leaves kind of passing on a stream. I notice each thought one at a time. I don't try to clump them all together. Just a thought is a leaf going on a stream and kind of flowing away. And that visualization, getting into your mind's eye is what I like to think of it as. It can help the mind and body connection. It helps our bodies and minds kind of, okay, this thought's going away in his brain. It's going to go away. I'm going to make it go away. So once you do that, once you go through your thoughts and imagine them floating downstream, then I just do a body scan. I'll start with my head. I put all my, again, with the imagery, I like to put all my thought and attention just in my head. Maybe I'll make a frown face, tense my eye muscles. I'm not going to do that on screen right now, though. And after I brought the attention to my head, I'll bring the attention to my shoulders. Up and down, moving my shoulders, just my shoulders. Bring that attention to your stomach. Again, putting your mind's eye into your stomach, thinking about it. Am I hungry? Am I full? What sensation? Do I feel a gurgle? After the stomach, I go to my back. Again, putting all my attention, my thoughts and awareness just in my back. Is there pain? Am I comfortable? From the back, you move to your legs, clenching the muscles, bringing all the awareness, all the attention just on these specific body parts. And then when you're done, notice if you feel a sense of relaxation or relief. And again, these are one of the things that the first time you try it and you give yourself an honest attempt, you will feel more relaxed, you will feel more focused. But the real benefits are only going to come from, regular practice, doing it daily, sometimes 2 to 3 times per day. And you're going to start to become more aware of your thoughts and your feelings, how you act, how you react. And again, this awareness is the biggest part to feeling positive, to feeling like our problems are just problems and they can be solved. Developing that neuroplasticity, to be aware of how I think, what bothers me, what are my thoughts doing to me. Are there any questions right now? I can't see if there's people here, so I don't know if there's a hand raised.
There's lots of people here enjoying every minute of it. At least I know I am. Thank you, Nate.
Okay, you're welcome.
For everyone who is here on this call on a screen through Zoom, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask Nate your question. He's here to relieve all of your stress now. Just kidding.
I'm not sure if that dog crying, if that was, could you guys hear that? Because to me, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard.
It was in real time how well you could keep your cool even under some stress. Absolutely. Well done. Really well done. Nailed it. Having been a long-term dog owner myself, I know oh too well what that's all about. If you are joining us by telephone, which I know a few folks are, you can *6 to unmute yourself. *6 will toggle between mute and unmute. And everyone is welcome to ask questions. We have some gratitude. Thank you, Nate. Great job. In the chat box from Gail. Thank you, Gail. I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have a sense of if somebody made a committed, a conscientious effort to start doing some deep breathing and some of the mindfulness practices you spoke of today, if they were doing like that a few times a day, how long do you think it might take somebody to actually start like automatically going there and being able to physically really feel in the moment? That
I think that's different for everybody, and depending on the stressor. Where like, I think, they say that 30 days to develop a habit, 19 to make it whatever, to make it a routine. It depends on the situation. I think the biggest thing that comes from it is, again, learning yourself and what bothers you and the small stuff. I keep going back to that obvious but unnoticed, and my stress tends to be the big things I want to try to ignore, and then the little things make it kind of boil over. And I think by practicing mindfulness, the little things you can realize are just little things, and more of your energy and attention can go on the bigger issues at hand. So, I mean, it helps with that kind of stuff pretty immediately, to be honest, of just noticing, like an example, again, I always go back to my marriage, but, taking it out on someone where an issue at work, and then if somebody, wants to watch the show, you're not going to watch, it becomes a bigger deal to me because I'm stressed, and, you want what you want because you think that's the answer. And it just helps to access those thoughts and feelings of this person with me is not the problem. This thought I'm having about something else is the problem. But I'd say how long before you get those benefits? I mean, depends on how self-aware you are and what the issue is. Pretty quickly, though, I think you notice the benefits. I mean, even just a quick body scan, spending 5 minutes, you're going to feel relaxed immediately. So how long does it take someone to realize that's what you should do in the moment? I guess depends on the person.
cool. Thank you, Nate. Are there any other questions out amongst our audience? Give a second for that to. Okay, from Gus asks, frustration with new site limitations is more prevalent than stress. How can I deal with frustration?
Yeah, I mean, new site limitations, again, that's the thing. I always try to think about what we have control over and what we have to let go of. new site, when your site is changing, change is what causes stress. The unknown is what causes stress. Going even back to the pandemic talk, not knowing how long it's going to last is causing stress. I think with vision, will this get worse? What will I be able to do? I think that it's kind of a mindset thing. Understanding you are going to be frustrated with changing vision. There's no way around it. There's no way to make that not a frustrating situation. But what is your mindset? If you're dwelling on why did this happen, why me, chances are you're going to be struggling with that for a long time. But if you're asking yourself, what can I do? What can I do about this frustration? What's causing it? What are things to decrease this frustration? And that's going to help. I really believe in therapy. Getting the answer is not really what therapy is. It's more, I think, actively looking, actively trying to better yourself or to find answers is therapeutic. So again, with frustrations with vision changes, acknowledge to yourself that it's not necessarily a good thing. It's frustrating, but also acknowledge to yourself that you are still capable of finding solutions. You're going to have to lean on people that you trust and you love, and you're going to have to look for new ways to enjoy yourself in some cases, and develop that neuroplasticity. Think about your line of thinking and develop creativity. There's not one answer to deal with that, but sort of not putting yourself in a box is the first thing to think about, I guess.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm keeping my eye on the chat box in case anybody else asks a question, but I do have one more for you. One of the things, and it touches back on how you were talking about how change in and of itself is a new stressor, is stressful. And one of the things that I've, in talking to folks over the years, I think everybody has this sad, scary misperception that once we get of a certain age or once we get that job or that spouse or get to that place in life, that everything is now easy or handled smoothly, right? But it's all still change. And so this whole learning curve, and, we're not the same person we were so many years ago, only older, but sometimes, whether it be vision loss or even retirement, like, woohoo, don't have to get up and go, to work every morning and deal with traffic. But then there's a new stress of, well, what am I going to do with my day? Can you talk a little bit on how, realistic expectations or changes in expectation kind of fit into that self-awareness piece and change that you were talking about?
Yeah, change, I think even good changes can be stressful for people. I think understanding that it's inevitable, even when we think we're at that point, okay, I've got the job that was going to get me the salary that I'm okay now, you're still going to go through change stuff. And once we know that, there's going to be good, there's bad. And once we learn to accept that, they're a little more manageable. What was the second part of your question about? What was that, Lisa?
About how the self-awareness and the expectation, like there is no, there's always a time to fall back on other people, confidants, or.
So, yeah, okay. Yeah, expectations gets me back to thinking about, that text message I got when I was at the comedy show and I can only see half. And, we can't help it where we're trying to fill in the missing information. I think it's natural. We want to connect something to a feeling. We want to know, with COVID, we want to know how long it's going to last, or are we going to get the job or not? And so we tend to fill it in with, well, I'm not going to get the job, with the negative thinking, or I'm definitely get it with the positive thinking. I think the key to expectations is understanding that we don't know, we don't have control over everything. We're naturally going to be comparing. That's what an expectation is kind of comparing it to another feeling or thought. You know, and understanding that we naturally lean towards the negative. We want to fill things in. And so not doing anything necessarily about the expectations, but understanding how our brain thinks. Knowing that we're going to have expectations. And again, so that's sort of playing through the scenarios in your head, but not necessarily really doing a deep dive in, just acknowledging this is a thought I have. This is an expectation. Expectations aren't always reality, and acknowledging that too. You know, like even thinking back to that text message, I think if not what I know, knowing what I know now, when I got in that message, you know, to not really try to fill in the void, to acknowledge this is a little scary. I don't have this information. It could be this, it could be that, it could be that, you know, kind of going down the list without exploring really why, just what I'm thinking, kind of would have helped ease my mind and really come to the conclusion, I don't know. I don't have all the information yet. I need to find out. And probably would have made me feel a little better in the moment, if that answers your question about expectations. Acknowledge them, but don't dive deep into them. It's a thought, but it's only a thought. I don't know yet.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Again, fabulous presentation. And again, all of our recordings will be available on the website.